Two flight attendants vanished on Christmas Eve 1992. 33 years later, hidden tunnels revealed why. The air at the airport was alive with excitement and laughter, families rushing to catch flights home for the holidays, and the warm glow of festive lights reflecting off the polished floors. Among the crowd of passengers and airport staff were Emily Harper and Lisa Morno, two flight attendants who had spent the last several years building a reputation for their kindness, professionalism, and cheerful personalities. Emily, with her bright smile and calm demeanor, had a way of comforting anxious travelers. Lisa, on the other hand, was energetic and always ready with a joke or a friendly word to lift spirits during the hectic hours of airport life. That evening, they were finishing their final shift before Christmas, eager to head home to celebrate with their families. The day had started like any other. The airport was busy, but Emily and Lisa had handled their duties with ease, guiding passengers through boarding gates, ensuring flights were on schedule, and keeping spirits high despite the stress of the holiday rush. As the evening wore on, the sky outside darkened, and snow began to lightly fall, blanketing the city in a serene, white layer that contrasted sharply with the bustling energy inside the terminal. For many, it was a magical scene, but for Emily and Lisa, the night was nearing its end, and thoughts of home and family began to dominate their minds. By 8 p.m., the two women had completed their last flight of the day. They gathered their belongings, exchanged hugs and cheerful goodbyes with colleagues, and made their way toward the parking garage. It was a place they had walked countless times, a familiar path that should have led them safely to their cars and eventually to warmth and family. But something was different that night, something subtle yet unsettling, though neither Emily nor Lisa could have known it at the time. As they descended into the dimly lit garage, the hum of fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting uneven shadows across the concrete walls. The usual sounds of engines starting, tires crunching on snow, and distant chatter echoed strangely in the empty sections of the garage. Emily glanced around and noticed a dark figure in the distance, leaning against a pillar. She hesitated, feeling a slight unease, but Lisa waved her off with a laugh. "Probably just someone waiting for a ride," she said. Their voices bounced slightly in the vast, empty space, but the reassurance didn't quite erase the creeping sense of tension. The two women reached their parking area and began to walk toward their cars. Emily's mind wandered to the festive dinner she would soon share with her parents, and Lisa pictured her younger brother opening presents under the Christmas tree. In those moments, their thoughts were filled with warmth, hope, and anticipation. They never noticed the subtle movement behind them or the quiet figure that seemed to follow at a distance. By the time they reached their cars, the lights above flickered once more, plunging the garage into brief shadows before returning to normal. Emily unlocked her car, and Lisa opened her own door, and for a moment it seemed like a typical end to a long workday. But then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A muffled sound echoed in the distance, the kind of noise that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. Emily turned, thinking it might be a maintenance worker, someone else passing through the garage, but she saw no one. Lisa called her name softly, and Emily's voice responded with concern. They exchanged a puzzled glance, unsure if they had imagined the sound. The parking garage, usually filled with cars and activity, suddenly felt empty and ominous. Minutes passed, yet no one else seemed to be there. Emily and Lisa, growing slightly uneasy, hurried to their vehicles. But when they reached their cars, a startling realization hit them. The keys they had just placed on the seat moments ago were gone. Panic began to creep in. Emily checked her purse, and Lisa patted down her pockets frantically, but the keys were nowhere to be found. At first, they thought perhaps they had misplaced them, but the sense of unease grew stronger with every passing second. The shadows seemed darker, the silence heavier. Something felt wrong, but the exact danger was impossible to name. As they called out again, their voices carried unnaturally far in the empty garage. The sound of distant footsteps echoed, but when they turned to look, no one was there. A chilling thought ran through Emily's mind. What if someone had been watching them all along? Lisa, trying to stay calm, suggested they move toward the exit together. But as they began walking, a sudden noise startled them, a low thud coming from somewhere deep within the garage. It was followed by a faint scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across the concrete floor. The two women froze. Emily grabbed Lisa's arm, her heart racing. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. Lisa nodded, gripping her purse tightly. They started toward the stairwell that led up to the main terminal, the sound of their footsteps echoing in rhythm with their pounding hearts. Every corner they passed seemed to hide unseen threats, every shadow a potential danger. It was as if the familiar space of the parking garage had transformed into something sinister, a place where the ordinary rules of safety no longer applied. Then, as if disappearing into thin air, Emily and Lisa vanished. No witnesses saw what happened. No security cameras captured the moment. It was as if the garage itself had swallowed them whole. By the time colleagues realized the women hadn't left, panic spread through the airport staff. Calls were made, announcements issued, and security teams scoured every inch of the terminal and parking areas. But every search returned the same grim truth. There was no trace of Emily or Lisa. In the hours that followed, families received calls that would change their lives forever. Parents, siblings, and close friends rushed to the airport, their faces pale with worry. Police combed the area with searchlights, but the vastness of the airport and its hidden corners made the task nearly impossible. Interviews with coworkers painted a picture of two diligent, happy women who would never simply disappear without a trace. Rumors began to swirl among staff and travelers alike. Some whispered about secret compartments beneath the airport, long-abandoned maintenance tunnels, or even criminal activity hidden behind the airport's cheerful facade. Despite the exhaustive efforts of law enforcement, Emily and Lisa were gone, and the case quickly grew cold. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the vibrant energy of the holiday season faded into a quiet, anxious dread for those who loved them. The airport returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow, a reminder that sometimes even the most ordinary places could hide extraordinary mysteries. Over the years, the disappearance became something of a legend among airport staff. New employees would hear the story of Emily and Lisa's last night whispered in the break rooms or during late-night shifts. The tale was shared with a mix of fear, sorrow, and disbelief. It became clear that whatever had happened in that parking garage was beyond the understanding of ordinary people. The memory of two bright, kind women disappearing so suddenly without explanation was haunting, a puzzle that refused to be solved. And yet, despite the passage of time, hope never fully faded. Family members continued to search for answers, investigators occasionally reopened the case, and strangers who had known the women offered leads, no matter how small. Each Christmas Eve, a quiet vigil was held by those who loved them, lighting candles and praying for a miracle that might one day bring clarity to the long, dark night of December 24, 1992. The story of Emily Harper and Lisa Mornow's disappearance serves as a reminder that life can change in an instant, that ordinary moments can become extraordinary mysteries, and that the human desire for answers and justice can endure across decades, even when the world seems to have forgotten. Years passed, and the memory of that fateful Christmas Eve in 1992 lingered like a shadow over the lives of those who had known Emily Harper and Lisa Mornow. The airport continued to hum with activity, oblivious to the tragedy that had occurred within its walls. Families came and went, travelers rushed to their gates, and the bright lights of the terminal reflected on polished floors just as they had decades before. Yet, for the people who loved Emily and Lisa, the passage of time did little to soften the ache of uncertainty. Each day without news was another day of unanswered questions, another day of wondering what could have possibly happened in the cold, empty parking garage that had swallowed the two women so completely. Law enforcement officers never stopped searching, even as the trail grew colder. New technologies were applied to the old case files. Fingerprints were re-examined, evidence analyzed with advanced tools, and anyone who had been in the vicinity of the airport that night was questioned again. Each investigation brought small sparks of hope, but ultimately the clues led nowhere. Witnesses had vague recollections, but no one could definitively say they had seen anything out of the ordinary. The airport's security cameras from that era had limited coverage, and many had long since been replaced or discarded. Every lead felt like a thread pulled in the dark, only to vanish into nothingness. Meanwhile, the families of Emily and Lisa clung to memories of their loved ones. Emily's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harper, often looked at old photographs, laughing softly at the younger version of their daughter, her bright smile frozen in time. They remembered the way she would light up a room, how her laughter could ease tension during the busiest hours at the airport, and how she always went out of her way to help strangers feel comfortable and safe. Her absence left a hole in their lives, one that could not be filled with words or wishes. Lisa's family felt the same emptiness. Her younger brother, Mark, who had been just a boy at the time, grew into a young man carrying the weight of unanswered questions. Each year, he remembered the Christmas Eve when his sister vanished, and he thought about the family traditions she would never return to, the laughter she would never share, and the life she could have lived. Her parents would sit quietly by the fireplace during the holidays, holding each other's hands, remembering the warmth of Lisa's presence, and trying to maintain a sense of hope that one day, some clue would emerge to explain what had happened. Within the airport, Emily and Lisa's disappearance became a story whispered quietly among employees. New staff members were told of the two flight attendants who had vanished decades before, their names spoken with a mixture of reverence and unease. Some employees swore they had felt strange occurrences near the areas where the women had last been seen, lights flickering unexpectedly, shadows moving in ways that didn't make sense, or faint sounds echoing through empty corridors. While many dismissed these stories as superstition or imagination, the consistency of the accounts kept the legend alive. The airport, a place meant for travel and joy, had become a symbol of mystery, reminding everyone that even familiar places could hold secrets. Journalists occasionally revisited the case, searching for fresh angles to rekindle public interest. Articles appeared in local newspapers, recounting the last known movements of Emily and Lisa and interviewing those who had worked alongside them. Some stories focused on the emotional impact on the families, while others speculated about possible scenarios, accidental misadventures, criminal involvement, or even hidden passages within the airport. While these pieces offered little in the way of concrete answers, they kept the memory of the flight attendants alive in the public consciousness. People who had flown through the airport decades after the incident still asked staff about the story, a reminder of how deeply the mystery had woven itself into the fabric of the community. During these years, some theories began to take shape, though none could be confirmed. Certain airport employees speculated about the existence of hidden tunnels and maintenance corridors that were no longer in regular use. Rumors spread that criminal activities had been conducted in these concealed spaces, from smuggling operations to unauthorized storage of goods. Others believed that the disappearance could have been an accident. Perhaps Emily and Lisa had stumbled into a forgotten passage and become trapped, unable to call for help. Still, no physical evidence supported any of these ideas. The tunnels, if they existed, remained unseen and untouched, and the women's fate remained a painful mystery. As decades passed, the airport underwent renovations, expanding terminals and modernizing security systems. Yet even with these changes, the memory of Emily and Lisa persisted. Employees shared stories with new colleagues, recounting the eerie details of the night they vanished. Occasionally, a young worker would notice a door or passage that seemed out of place, or hear unexplained noises in the older sections of the airport. These moments reminded them that the story was not just a relic of the past. It was a living, persistent reminder that something unexplained had occurred. The families, despite the years, never gave up hope entirely. Mr. Harper and Lisa's parents visited the airport often, sometimes sitting quietly in the terminal or near the parking garage where their daughters had last been seen. They watched travelers come and go, wondering if the women might somehow appear among the crowd. They wrote letters to law enforcement, requested new investigations, and followed any news of similar cases in the area. Each day brought a mix of longing and despair, a delicate balance between accepting the loss and clinging to the faint possibility that answers would one day arrive. Friends of Emily and Lisa also kept the story alive, sharing memories and photographs, retelling tales of the women's warmth, humor, and dedication. They held informal gatherings on anniversaries of the disappearance, exchanging stories of happier times, keeping their spirits alive through remembrance. Their shared grief strengthened bonds among those left behind, creating a network of support and a community bound together by love and loss. Over time, the disappearance began to influence airport policies and security awareness. While the specific circumstances remained a mystery, the case highlighted vulnerabilities in airport infrastructure, particularly in areas less frequented by the public. Maintenance corridors, storage areas, and parking facilities were inspected more thoroughly, security protocols tightened, and emergency response measures improved. The memory of Emily and Lisa, though tragic, contributed to a safer environment for others, a small legacy amid the heartache. Despite these efforts, the lack of closure weighed heavily on everyone involved. Law enforcement officers who had worked on the case recalled the frustration of dead ends, the gnawing feeling of incompleteness, and the haunting image of two young women disappearing without a trace. Retirees who had once patrolled the airport spoke of nights spent scanning empty corridors, imagining every possible scenario, and hoping against hope that they might discover a clue that had been overlooked. The case became a benchmark for unsolved mysteries, a story that exemplified both the limits of investigation and the resilience of human hope. Each year, as December 24 approached, the absence of Emily and Lisa was felt more keenly. Families, friends, and colleagues would gather quietly, lighting candles, sharing memories, and speaking of the women as though they were still present. Children who had grown up hearing the story of the flight attendants learned to understand loss, patience, and the importance of hope even when outcomes are uncertain. The narrative became more than a tale of disappearance. It became a lesson in the fragility of life and the enduring strength of love and remembrance. Rumors continued to circulate over the years. Some claimed to have seen figures resembling Emily or Lisa in distant cities or even other countries, feeding hope that the women might have survived in some extraordinary way. Others speculated about accidents in hidden areas of the airport or deliberate acts by individuals who sought to hide secrets. While none of these claims were ever substantiated, they contributed to the ongoing fascination and persistent search for answers. By the mid-2000s, the story of Emily and Lisa had transcended its origins as a local mystery. True crime enthusiasts, writers, and investigative journalists began revisiting the case, searching archives, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together fragments of evidence. Podcasts were made, documentaries considered, and online forums devoted to the mystery allowed strangers from around the world to share theories, speculate, and express sympathy. The story had become part of a larger cultural consciousness, a tale of unresolved tragedy that captured the imagination of many. Despite decades of mystery, the hope that one day the truth would emerge never died. Families held onto the possibility that Emily and Lisa might be found, or that evidence would surface to explain their disappearance. Airport staff continued to report unusual sounds or movements in rarely used areas, fueling speculation about forgotten spaces within the terminal. Law enforcement files remained open, occasionally revisited as new technology offered fresh possibilities for analysis. In this way, the memory of that Christmas Eve in 1992 persisted, growing in significance with every year that passed. A reminder that even after decades, some stories remain alive, waiting for resolution. And so life went on at the airport, bustling with travelers, laughter, and holiday celebrations. Yet, beneath the ordinary routines, the story of Emily Harper and Lisa Morneau lingered, a haunting reminder that mysteries do not fade with time. Their disappearance continued to inspire investigation, reflection, and remembrance. For everyone who had loved them, it was a reminder that hope, memory, and human resilience endure even in the face of the unknown. The case became a part of the airport itself, a story woven into its history, its walls silently keeping the secrets of that long-ago Christmas Eve. By 2025, the airport had changed significantly. Terminals had been modernized with shiny glass walls, automated check-in counters, and bright, energy-efficient lights. Travelers hurried past, busy with their flights, unaware of the history hidden beneath the polished floors and bustling crowds. Yet even as the airport embraced progress, some corners of the terminal had remained untouched for decades. Old maintenance areas, long-forgotten storage rooms, and winding corridors had been sealed off but never entirely erased from memory. It was in one of these hidden spaces that a discovery would finally shock the city and rekindle the mystery that had haunted the disappearance of Emily Harper and Lisa Morneau. Construction crews had been hired to expand the airport, adding a new section for international flights and renovating older areas. They worked tirelessly, navigating narrow passages and dark storage rooms that most passengers had never seen. Among the crew was a man named Carlos, a practical and careful worker who had spent years navigating construction sites with precision. One afternoon, while removing an old wall near the terminal's sub-basement, he noticed something unusual. Behind a layer of bricks and concrete, there appeared to be a narrow opening, partially hidden by decades of dust and debris. At first, he thought it might be a maintenance access point that had been forgotten. But the deeper he looked, the more it became clear that this was not an ordinary passage. Carlos called his supervisor, who quickly alerted airport security. Soon, the area was cordoned off and investigators were brought in. They examined the tunnel carefully, using flashlights and measuring equipment to map its layout. The passage twisted and turned in ways that suggested it had been used long before the airport's modern construction. As they moved further inside, they discovered multiple offshoots and hidden chambers, some large enough to walk through comfortably, others narrow and confined. Dust-covered crates and abandoned equipment suggested that the space had once been in active use, but for what purpose, no one yet knew. Word of the discovery spread quickly. News outlets arrived at the airport, cameras capturing the curious excavation and the police presence. For decades, the disappearance of Emily and Lisa had been a cold case, a mystery that lingered only in whispers and memories. Now, with hidden tunnels uncovered beneath the terminal, there was a sudden sense of hope that perhaps the decades-long puzzle could finally be solved. Families of the missing women were contacted, and for the first time in years, their hearts filled with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Could these tunnels finally hold the answers they had longed for? Investigators explored the labyrinth systematically. Using advanced mapping technology, they traced every corridor and passage, noting hidden rooms and dead ends. Forensic teams combed the area for fingerprints, fibers, and other evidence that could link the tunnels to the disappearance. Small items were discovered: a worn piece of luggage, fragments of personal belongings, and faint traces of fabric that suggested someone had been there long ago. Each discovery brought a rush of adrenaline and hope to the investigators. They realized that the tunnels were far more extensive than anyone had imagined, a secret network beneath the airport that had been forgotten over decades. The history of the tunnels began to emerge slowly. Airport archives revealed that many had been built during the early days of the terminal, initially intended for maintenance, storage, and utility access. Over the years, some areas were abandoned, blocked off, or forgotten entirely. But the discovery suggested that not all use had been innocent. Investigators began to piece together a theory. Perhaps these passages had been exploited for secretive activity, away from the watchful eyes of passengers and staff. The possibility that Emily and Lisa had encountered such activity on the night of their disappearance grew stronger with each step into the hidden labyrinth. Among the first items found was a small notebook, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was faint but legible, detailing routines, names, and locations within the tunnel network. Investigators speculated that it had belonged to someone who had worked in the tunnels, possibly using them to move items discreetly or conduct operations that were not meant to be seen by others. While the notebook did not immediately reveal the fate of Emily and Lisa, it provided clues about who might have been in the area on that night and what kinds of activities had occurred. The discovery renewed determination to solve the mystery once and for all. As teams ventured further into the maze of tunnels, more evidence emerged. Signs of long-term habitation appeared: empty food containers, remnants of clothing, and makeshift sleeping areas. The investigators noted that someone had lived here, perhaps temporarily, hidden from view. They also found remnants of tools and materials that suggested work had been done in secret, perhaps to maintain the tunnels or conceal certain activities. Every corridor seemed to tell a story of a hidden world beneath the airport, one that existed in parallel with the bustling activity above but remained invisible to everyone for decades. Families of Emily and Lisa were invited to view parts of the site under careful supervision. The emotions were overwhelming. Tears were shed as they realized that the tunnels might hold the key to understanding what had happened to their loved ones. While there was still much uncertainty, The evidence provided a tangible connection to the past, bridging decades of unanswered questions. For the first time, hope felt real rather than distant, and the families allowed themselves to imagine that the truth, however difficult, might finally be revealed. Investigators also began reviewing old witness statements and airport reports from 1992 in light of the new findings. Certain descriptions of shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and strange activity in the parking garage suddenly made more sense. It appeared that Emily and Lisa had inadvertently discovered something they were not meant to see. Whether they had been trapped, misled, or harmed in the process remained unclear, but the tunnels provided a plausible context for their disappearance. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, forming a narrative that had eluded investigators for decades. One of the most chilling discoveries was a small room deep within the tunnels that seemed to have been used for concealment. Personal items, some of them partially decayed, suggested that someone had been hidden or confined here long ago. Investigators treated the findings with extreme care, documenting every detail and preserving the evidence. While the exact circumstances could not yet be fully determined, the room offered the first real hint of what might have happened to Emily and Lisa, bridging the gap between decades of speculation and a tangible, physical reality. Forensic teams worked tirelessly, employing modern techniques to analyze the tunnels and items found within them. DNA samples were collected, fibers compared, and traces of materials examined under high-powered microscopes. The investigation was painstaking but methodical, as experts sought to build an irrefutable chain of evidence. The discovery of the tunnels marked a turning point in the case. What had been a cold, unsolvable mystery now had a path forward, one that promised answers after 33 years of uncertainty. Public interest in the case surged. News outlets broadcast the discovery, interviews with investigators were aired, and journalists covered every new finding. The story of the vanished flight attendants, which had once been a local legend, now captivated a wider audience. People were fascinated not only by the mystery of the disappearance, but also by the hidden world beneath the airport, a labyrinth that had remained undiscovered for decades. The tunnels themselves became a symbol of secrets hidden in plain sight, a reminder that sometimes extraordinary events can occur where least expected. Despite the excitement, investigators proceeded cautiously. They were aware that decades had passed, that evidence might be contaminated, and that some questions might never be fully answered. Yet the tunnels offered the most concrete lead since the disappearance occurred. Every discovery within the labyrinth was meticulously recorded, analyzed, and cross-referenced with historical documents and witness statements. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge, one that hinted at both the peril Emily and Lisa had faced and the extraordinary nature of the hidden infrastructure beneath the airport. As the weeks went by, new items were uncovered, each adding another layer to the story. Old clothing, personal effects, and fragments of luggage provided tangible links to the past. Investigators hypothesized that Emily and Lisa had encountered the tunnels while leaving the parking garage, perhaps by accident or because they had noticed something unusual. Once inside, the complexity of the passageways may have prevented them from finding their way out. Combined with potential interference from individuals using the tunnels for secretive purposes, the women could have been trapped, unseen by anyone above ground. The discovery of the tunnels also prompted broader questions about airport safety and oversight. How had such an extensive network remained hidden for so long? Were there other areas of the airport similarly forgotten? Airport officials launched a comprehensive review, sealing off additional hidden areas and increasing monitoring to prevent future accidents or misuse. In a way, the discovery not only provided hope for answers, but also improved safety for everyone who passed through the airport. By the end of the investigation into the tunnels themselves, investigators were confident that the hidden passages had played a central role in the disappearance of Emily and Lisa. While the exact details of what had happened remained to be clarified, the tunnels had finally revealed why the two flight attendants had vanished so completely on that Christmas Eve 33 years ago. The discovery was a testament to the persistence of investigators, the hope of families, and the enduring power of human curiosity in uncovering truths long buried. With the discovery of the hidden tunnels beneath the airport, hope began to flourish among the families of Emily, Harper, and Lisa Morneau. After 33 years of uncertainty, they finally had a reason to believe that answers were within reach. Investigators meticulously examined the labyrinth, tracing every passage, measuring every corner, and documenting each item found. The evidence was carefully preserved, and the story of the vanished flight attendants slowly began to take shape. What emerged was both shocking and heartbreaking, yet it finally provided the clarity that had eluded authorities for decades. The tunnels had been more extensive than anyone had imagined. Some passages were wide and tall, others narrow and low, twisting and turning in complex patterns that would have made navigation difficult even for someone familiar with the layout. Investigators believed that on the night of December 24, 1992, Emily and Lisa had inadvertently discovered the entrances to these hidden corridors while walking through the parking garage. It was possible that their curiosity, combined with the unusual noises and shadows they had noticed, drew them into a space that few had ever entered. Once inside, the complexity of the tunnels may have caused confusion, preventing them from finding their way out. But as investigators explored further, it became clear that the tunnels were not used solely for maintenance or storage. Evidence suggested that certain individuals had exploited the labyrinth for secretive purposes. Old records, personal effects, and traces of equipment indicated that the tunnels had been used to move items discreetly, perhaps illegally, without attracting attention from airport staff or passengers. Investigators theorized that Emily and Lisa had witnessed something they were not supposed to see, making them a threat to the secrecy of these activities. The realization added a chilling layer to the story, explaining why the women had vanished so completely and why no one had ever seen them again. In one section of the tunnels, forensic teams discovered a small, enclosed room that appeared to have been used for concealment. Inside were remnants of personal belongings, including fragments of clothing and faint traces of materials that could be linked to the missing flight attendants. The room had been carefully hidden, with access restricted to those who knew the secret paths. Investigators pieced together that Emily and Lisa may have been trapped or hidden here, either accidentally or deliberately. The evidence suggested that they had encountered individuals who wanted to remain unseen, and their presence in the tunnels had placed them in danger. Further analysis revealed that the individuals using the tunnels were employees with detailed knowledge of the airport's infrastructure. They had exploited the forgotten corridors to move materials and maintain secrecy over years, taking advantage of areas that had been sealed off and largely ignored. Investigators discovered logs and notes detailing routines, entrances, and exits, which confirmed that the labyrinth had been monitored and controlled. This knowledge helped explain why Emily and Lisa's disappearance had gone undetected for so long. The tunnels had created a hidden world beneath the terminal, one that few ever suspected existed. Family members were invited to view some of the tunnels under controlled conditions, escorted by investigators. The experience was both surreal and emotional. Walking through the narrow passages, they could imagine the fear and confusion that Emily and Lisa might have felt on that night. Seeing the hidden rooms and forgotten areas brought the mystery into sharp focus. Tears were shed, and memories were shared as families reflected on the long wait for answers. While the discovery did not erase the pain, it offered a form of closure, a tangible understanding of what had happened after decades of uncertainty. Investigators also began reconstructing the night of the disappearance, combining evidence from the tunnels with witness statements and historical records. They surmised that Emily and Lisa, perhaps hearing strange noises or noticing unusual activity, had been drawn toward the entrances to the labyrinth. Once inside, the hidden corridors and secret rooms may have prevented them from finding their way back. The presence of individuals who were moving items secretly added a dangerous element. It seemed likely that the women had been confronted or trapped, explaining why they had not returned to the surface or been seen by anyone for decades. As the investigation continued, small personal items recovered from the tunnels were carefully analyzed. A scarf, a fragment of a notebook, and faint traces of fibers were compared with historical evidence, and it became increasingly clear that these belonged to Emily and Lisa. While forensic technology could not fully restore the events of that night, it confirmed their presence in the labyrinth, offering the first concrete proof of what had happened to them. The discovery provided families with an irreplaceable piece of truth, confirming that the women had been in the hidden tunnels and offering a clearer understanding of the danger they had faced. The city and the wider public were captivated by the story. News reports detailed the labyrinth, the recovered items, and the painstaking investigation. The discovery of the tunnels and the explanation of Emily and Lisa's disappearance fascinated readers and viewers, bringing widespread attention to the decades-long mystery. The airport, once a place associated only with travel and business, had become a symbol of hidden histories, secret worlds, and the power of human persistence in uncovering truths long forgotten. While the recovery of evidence brought clarity, it also raised difficult questions. What exactly had happened to Emily and Lisa after they entered the tunnels? Had they been held by the individuals exploiting the secret passages, or had they become lost in the labyrinth by accident? Investigators continued to analyze every clue, examining the layout of the tunnels, the remnants of personal effects, and any traces left behind. Each piece of information added context to the night of December 24, 1992, gradually constructing a narrative that had remained hidden for more than 3 decades. In the course of the investigation, authorities discovered that the tunnels had been sealed off after the 1990s due to structural concerns, which explained why the labyrinth remained hidden for so long. These closures, combined with limited historical documentation, had prevented anyone from accessing or even knowing about the extent of the passages. It was a reminder of how easily even the most significant mysteries can remain concealed when infrastructure is neglected or forgotten. The tunnels had remained a silent witness to the events of that Christmas Eve, preserving the truth until modern construction and technology brought it to light. For the families, understanding the tunnels provided more than facts. It provided context for the long years of uncertainty. They could now see why Emily and Lisa had vanished so completely, why no witnesses had seen them, and why the case had gone cold. The labyrinth was both a literal and metaphorical representation of the mystery, hidden, complex, and difficult to navigate, yet ultimately revealing its secrets when examined carefully and patiently. This understanding offered a form of emotional resolution, allowing family members to reconcile the passage of time with the reality of what had happened. The investigation also uncovered the careful planning of the individuals who had used the tunnels. Notes, logs, and traces of activity suggested that they had sought to maintain secrecy, using the labyrinth to move items and avoid detection. While there was no evidence of harm intended to Emily and Lisa, their presence had made them vulnerable, caught in a hidden network of passages and unknown activity. The tunnels themselves, while initially intended for maintenance, had been co-opted for secrecy and discretion, creating a situation that tragically ensnared the 2 young women. Authorities took steps to ensure that the tunnels could no longer pose a danger or be misused. Passages were sealed, security measures were strengthened, and inspections were expanded to cover all forgotten or unused areas of the terminal. In this way, the legacy of Emily and Lisa contributed to the safety of countless travelers, preventing future accidents and misuse. The airport, while forever marked by the tragedy, became a safer, more secure place due to the lessons learned from the labyrinth's discovery. Finally, the families were able to hold a ceremony to honor Emily and Lisa. In a quiet corner of the airport, near the sealed entrance to the tunnels, they shared memories, recounted stories, and reflected on the resilience of the women they had lost. The discovery of the tunnels and the recovery of evidence allowed them to understand the events of that night, transforming decades of unanswered questions into knowledge and emotional closure. While the pain of loss remained, it was accompanied by a sense of peace and the reassurance that their loved ones had not vanished without a trace. The story of Emily Harper and Lisa Morneau became part of the broader history of the airport, a tale of mystery, resilience, and discovery. It served as a reminder that even the most ordinary places can hold extraordinary secrets, and that patient, careful investigation can uncover truths that have remained hidden for decades. The discovery of the tunnels provided answers, but it also offered a deeper understanding of the complexities of human experience: fear, curiosity, danger, and the unrelenting hope for resolution. In the years that followed, the case remained a symbol of both tragedy and perseverance. Investigators, families, and the public remembered the story not only for the mystery it presented, but also for the lessons it imparted. The importance of vigilance, the resilience of memory, and the enduring human need to uncover truth. Emily and Lisa, whose disappearance had haunted a city for more than 3 decades, finally had their story told, their presence acknowledged, and their memory honored. Their lives, while cut short in mystery, left an enduring impact that would be remembered for generations. The tunnels, once hidden and forgotten, became a testament to history, secrecy, and the power of discovery. They reminded everyone that answers sometimes lie beneath the surface, waiting patiently for the moment when curiosity, technology, and determination converge. For Emily and Lisa's families, the long wait had ended, replaced by knowledge, understanding, and a profound sense of closure. The airport, its tunnels sealed, and its stories revealed, continued to hum with life above ground, but forever held the memory of 2 young women whose courage and fate had left an indelible mark on its history.